Hi everyone, it's Jann with What You Make It, and today we are going to be working on this really fun and festive white wreath on a red velveteen backdrop. Love the color combination, craft and red and white. I'm kind of leaning towards that a lot this season, so there's been several projects that had those color combos on it. This project is really simple. To build your wreath, I started out with some shimmer cardstock. This is some paper tray ink shimmer cardstock, and I cut it just a little bit larger than the die. And I found that if you have an intricate die, if you'll wiggle it a little bit and get the outside piece off first, leaving that inside piece kind of for stability, it ends up just coming out a little bit easier. Take your time. If you don't have a wreath die, no worries. Cut you a circle and cut out the center. I'm using a card from a pre-made card set with envelopes that I got at Hobby Lobby, and they're a little off size. They're 4 inches by 5.5, and so I was just kind of measuring to see how big my red square needed to be or could be for the wreath, and then make sure that there's plenty of room for my sentiment at the bottom. You just have to do a little measuring, and then everything else is pretty simple. I think I ended up with a 3 3/4 inch square. Now for all the little wreath branches, I am using this Martha Stewart pine bough, and I just went along and punched a whole bunch of them out. And you can see over there in my little blue bowl, I had all my pieces. That's a banana split bowl, but it's great for holding little bits and pieces when you're working on a project. So we are going to get started. I'm going to lay down this velveteen cardstock, and if you don't have a red square would work also. I've also been known to use real fabric. So if you had a little swatch of velveteen fabric, you could probably adhere it to some cardstock and do the same thing. Now, because when I'm working with wood-mounted stamps, I'm just not very good at eyeballing it and getting it straight. Sometimes they have been mounted crooked on the wooden block, so I use my Stamp-A-Majig to position it. And what you do is you stamp on the clear sheet, put it where you want it, then put your little Stamp-A-Majig element there, and you're going to get a perfect placement every time. Going to do a little embossing on that, just give it a little bit of a shine. There's going to be so much detail in the upper part of the card. I wanted to make sure that the bottom part with the sentiment, which is just stamped on the card, had its own kind of visual weight, and adding some embossing will do that. So very easy, quick and easy to just add a little sentiment down there. So you know that this whole season I have been really focusing on making sure that I had an envelope that matched the card. And I really love white on craft. So I got a little wreath. This is from a paper tray ink stamp set called A Wreath for All Seasons. And then heat set it because I was using a pigment ink, which takes a little bit longer to dry, and I wanted to add some berries into it. And I'm going to be using my Copics, and so I just slid a piece of packaging down in there so that when I started adding the berries onto the wreath, it would not soak through to the back of the envelope. Ask me how I know that you need to do this. Yeah, sometimes we have to go with 2 or 3 takes of the project to be able to bring you the best techniques. Yeah, I soaked through and couldn't figure out how to do it until finally I thought, oh, let's just put a little piece of packaging down in there. So now we have our wreath. That's going to be a really nice complement to the card. And I'm going to use some Aleene's tacky glue. We want to do this to dry fairly quickly. And so I'm adding just a few little places. And again, if you have a wreath die or can use your silhouette or Cricut, that works great. But really just a circle will do. And I started in with all my little fronds, little pine boughs, and I alternate them. I turn one that kind of faces more towards the inside of the wreath, and then the next one I will go and line it up, overlap it, and go the other direction. I really like really full and fluffy wreaths, so I use a lot of pine boughs for this, but it goes really quickly, and I just think it gives such a nice, beautiful look to all those little airy branches. So when you get around to the other side, you'll want to lift up the first branches that you put in and tuck those in. And I find that working with a pair of tweezers is the best way for me to do that. I kind of get fumble fingers and get glue and everything else in there. So having a pair of tweezers really helps. Okay, so I wanted to put a few little berries in there, and I'm going to use some red, holiday red or Christmas red stickles to just add some berries in there. You can see this is a really quick and easy project to put together. I did quite a few of them, some of which I have been selling at craft fairs, and some of them I'm holding back for some family and friends that I want to send them to, because I just think they're elegant and yet a little bit rustic too, and I really like that. In fact, this kind of ended up being my inspiration for my December daily. Now what I'm doing right now is I'm tapping the bottom of it. It actually helps you flatten out the berries just a little bit. So I didn't have ribbon that was the exact color that I wanted, so I took a little bit of this linen 1/4 inch ribbon and just stained it with my Copics. I wanted it to have kind of both colors that I used in the berries. So just put it down, draw it through, and gives you perfectly matched ribbon. I do that a lot. Saves on buying a lot of different colors. Now, I know you all know from my last video that I am bow tying challenged. And when we get to it being a little bow, I'm particularly challenged. But I found that a fork is about the right size. And you can see that I pull the loop around, then push the two ends back down and tie the knot. And it gives me a nice finished bow. I am all about things that make tasks that are hard for us to do easier. And if fork will do it, I'm going to get a fork out of the drawer. You all know that I go just about everywhere in my house to find things that I can use in my art. So I'm just going to add this with some glossy accents. That'll dry pretty quickly. And that just finishes that card off really nicely. Very simple. Could do a bunch of them. Really easy to duplicate. I really love the white on the red background. It goes so well with the craft, but really any combination that is really kind of your favored combination for this Christmas would work great. I hope you will try this out for yourself because it's really simple and fun to do. If you haven't watched my video on creating layered backgrounds, I've put a link here. You can just click on the picture with the poinsettia on it and it will take you to that video. If you haven't watched it, I'd recommend that you do. I am working on another video to show you kind of a follow-up technique to that. So it'd be great if you knew the basics before we go to that next project, so I put a link for you there. I appreciate you so much and would love to keep in contact with you, so follow me on Pinterest, Facebook, Twitter. Now with the Google Plus, I'd be happy for you to follow me and I'll follow you back. You all have a great week, and I hope you have some time for creative play.